Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of The Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and it is my privilege to be your haunted host for this episode. As this is our first show of 2024, we'd like to start things off by wishing you a happy new year, filled with new hopes, new joys, and new beginnings. A few episodes ago, during our discussion of our investigations at the CN Tower, I made the offhand comment that I had a growing interest in speaking with a medium. Our journey into the paranormal has increasingly highlighted the significance of intention, especially in a group setting, and its apparent influence on manifesting paranormal activity. This intriguing connection between our thoughts and the confluence of physical and supernatural realms is one I want to explore further. Not long after that episode came out, a medium did reach out to me, which I took as a sign to invite them on the show. Our guest, Kim Dennis, is a gifted medium from Calgary whose remarkable abilities have resonated with individuals seeking spiritual guidance and captivated audiences across the nation. Known for her appearances on radio and television, as well as a regular contributor to Jann Arden's popular podcast, Kim's journey into mediumship is one of personal discovery and spiritual enlightenment, making her a source of comfort and clarity for many. My remarkable conversation with Kim includes how spirits communicate with her, the profound messages they share, and the lingering questions we have about life and death. Kim's stories of how departed loved ones maintain their connections from beyond are both touching and thought-provoking. Our talk extends into the realms of the paranormal and also solving cold cases. Even days later, I'm still pondering our fascinating discussion, and I believe it will have the same lasting impact for you. But before we get to that, our ghost tours are about to return for 2024. On January 27th, we launch a new winterized version of the original Haunted Walk of Ottawa, which includes a few indoor spots to get warmed up on those blustery nights. In Kingston and Toronto, tours resume on the weekend of February 3rd, including our Spirits of the Distillery District Ghost Tour in Toronto and our original Haunted Walk of Kingston. If you've never done a tour with us during the winter, it is a unique experience, where if you get the right night, the snow can add a real magical element to the evening. I suggest a big cup of hot chocolate and, of course, an open mind. Also, if you're looking for a really unique Valentine's gift for someone, we are partnering with our good friends at Phantoms of Yore for a special pre-Valentine's weekend investigation at the SDG Jail in Cornwall, Ontario. Is there a better way to say I love you than going to an old haunted prison? For information on our ghost tours or our special pre-Valentine's weekend investigation, please visit our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. We would also appreciate it if you follow, rate, and review the show wherever you listen, and follow The Haunted Walk on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Haunted Walk.
Everything's vibrational, right? So I can hear them, I can see them and feel them, but I hear them more than anything else. So everything carries a vibration, even your thoughts and whatever, right? So I think they just lower their vibration a little bit. I tap into a higher vibration and I can hear them talk. So, and I also get impressions like, images and stuff like that, just to help me get the message across.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's your origin story here? Was this a ability you were born with? Or
I was born this way. I started having out-of-body experiences at 13. Actually, that was probably the biggest indication. And I had them almost every day, every night, every day. If I had a nap, I was a teenager for almost exactly 10 years. And the reason I can calculate that way, because I had my first child at 23 and they stopped. But I had out-of-body experience almost every night. And as many as I had, I didn't go that far. I went around my room for the most part. I watched myself sleeping and then sort of pull back. And it's funny, even though I was young, I was never scared. I was confused, but I was never scared, and I never thought that I was going to die. And a couple times I did go to a higher place. Which I guess must have been heaven. But I mean, like, out of all the thousands of out-of-body experiences, that was only a couple times. Now, looking back, I had to see, so I can tell people, from my own experience, that there is some place other than here. And you don't worry about your loved ones who are crossed over. They're not sick. Nobody's sick on the other side. In fact, everybody's young. You know how as you get older, you always feel like the same young person on the inside? That's the real you. That's your soul, the person that you have the inner dialogue with. That does not age. You're wiser because you have more life experience and stuff. But, I remember my granddad at 90 said he felt like the same young soldier on the inside, which he was, not on the outside. So that part of us survives, and most people tangibly can connect to that thought. So yeah, you never hear a 20-year-old say, "Oh, I feel like the same young person on the inside." No, and you're not any age when you cross over, but the feelings like being there, like in the prime of your life. So I always say right off the bat, you got enough with grief and missing and your people and stuff like that. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them, because nobody is sick, nobody's old. And we kind of get that because you can't take your body, right? So we kind of get that. But I really reassure people that people with mental health as well too, or whatever, that they're at peace as well. One of the few famous people I've channeled was Christopher Reeve. I'm in Calgary, and the first Superman was filmed here. And one of his good friends came for a reading, and I was like, I'm getting Superman. And he came through. And if Superman's not in a wheelchair, nobody is on the other side. So that part of us that we have the inner dialogue that always feels young, that part survives. And I think we all come here. I mean, I'm not inventing this stuff, but we all come here to learn. I mean, I think that's what it is. I think we all come here to learn. Earth is a big school. We're all taking different classes. We're all learning different lessons. There's no mistakes in life, only lessons. But lessons are repeated till you get them, and learning never ends. And when you can't learn anything this time around, you're called home. That's what I think. Anyways, that's when you go back. And that's why it's different for everybody. That's why we don't all pass at the same age, right? I don't know why everything is the way it is. I know a little bit more than the average person. I don't know why babies make all the effort to come here and then cross over. I'm like, really? That's all you needed, right? Or why my friend's mom's laying in a nursing home at 97. Anytime I visit her, she says, if you've come here just to tell me I got more to learn, she's going to throw something at me, but I get it. But you know what? The universe still needs her. I think everybody crosses over when they're supposed to. It doesn't mean it's the right time for you to lose your loved one, right? It doesn't, but they go. So if they have to go, we want it to be right for them. So I help people sort out their feelings a little bit. It's okay to feel good about where they are and to feel happy for them. It doesn't mean you wanted them to go. So I try to take sort of the paranormal out of it a little bit and make that connection between that realm and this realm. So, I mean, you obviously can't bring anybody back, but to sort of narrow that gap so that, I don't know, it helps them heal. I know what people ask me, right? I've been doing this for like 25 years, and this is the basic stuff that they want to know. I mean, the paranormal is fun and stuff like that. But you know what? I will say I've been doing readings for 25 years-ish, and I've never encountered a spirit that was not happy, was not in a good place, regardless of what they were like here in the physical world. I mean, I hear that all the time. I always hear it's like, oh, your mom's here and your dad's here. And they're like, really? They're together? And like, I don't have to be a psychic to know they were divorced. And I'm like, there's no hard feelings on the other side. I'm not saying they hang out together all the time, right? But there's no hard feelings on the other side. They're beyond that.
You mentioned that most profoundly you hear the voices speaking to you, the spirits from the past. Can you elaborate on that and what the communication is like? Is it, often and I assume throughout this conversation, I'll use like on TV, we see mediums. It kind of seems like the medium is having a conversation with the spirit, almost like in a different room.
It is. It is. It's like a conversation in my head. The way you kind of have a conversation with yourself with that is, it's just like I'm having a conversation with someone else. And you know what? As much as I've been doing it like this, like I said, I've been doing readings for about 25 years, there's only like a handful of times I've actually heard the voice outside myself. Most of it is in my thoughts and stuff like that. But a couple times I have heard it. I've heard it outside myself. I know it's kind of hard to explain, but it is. It's like an inner dialogue. And I know it's not about me. I know that it's for this other person. And I always tell people, look, I don't control who comes through. I don't, right? I just tell you who comes through, and I don't hold anything back, but I don't control who comes through. But it's like if somebody was hearing impaired, and I'm like trying to help translate for them. The medium is the person in the middle, right?
Now, obviously, doing this kind of work, you have an insight that a lot of us don't, in particularly, as you mentioned, the very big question. And one of the questions we tackle here often on the show, of course, is what happens to us when we die. So you mentioned a few things about that the spirits all seem to be happy, content. In that same vein, have you ever come across anything, I guess, that's an entity, something that's non-human or anything dark or negative, or is it always positive?
It's always been positive. And you know what? This is, I always I contradict myself a lot. I've never encountered, I don't know if there's demons or if that's what you're talking about, other entities. I don't know. I've never encountered them. I've never encountered a spirit or anything that's ever been hurtful or anything like that. I mean, this has to add to my life. It can't take away from it. So I don't know if I'm just well protected so I can do this or if they don't exist. But my contradiction is, I think, how the universe works, where there's light, there's dark, there's on, there's off, there's good, there's bad. I think that's how it works. So if they do exist, I've never encountered them. I've never been fearful. I've been caught off guard. I live in a house built in 1888, right? And I sometimes I catch a little girl or the odd spirit or whatever. I had one, actually, a friend of mine lost her son, and he tapped me on the back of the shoulder the other day, and I turned around and he was there. So it caught me off guard, but I'd never once felt threatened, scared, anything like that. So I don't think there's anything to be afraid of. And you know what else? I could even back that up. In the years I've been doing readings, not one time has somebody come to me and said, oh, you know what? I felt somebody in my house, and they might be a little unnerved because I'm like, I wonder if it's their dad or whatever, but nothing bad has ever happened to them. They've never been hurt. Nothing's ever been happened. No. We fear what we don't understand, right? And I get it. We fear what we don't understand. It's not tangible. But, and I'm like, if you saw your dad at the foot of your bed, it's not as common, and they do visit us in their sleep. They're not dreams. I think there's nightmares, dreams, and visits. If it's pleasant, that they're visiting your sleep. And a lot of times we ask for it. It's like, oh, this is happening, all these little things. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably asking your mom or your dad for signs that they're around. And then when they do it, and some of them are loud, you're like, woo.
And in your kind of conversations with the spirits, how do they describe being dead? I mean, we think about it in a physical sense. Like I've attempted to ask you, like, where are they? But maybe that's not a good way. But have they conveyed to you what it's like?
I think, like I said, I think learning continues on the other side. I mean, that's a pretty common spiritual belief, right? I think it is. I don't know how they do it, how that happens, but I do believe learning continues on the other side. And I think, almost like asked, and I think at some point we all reincarnate. I don't think anybody's on their first or last life. We're all part of the universe, right? Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. You can't see electricity, you can't see Wi-Fi, right? But we understand that it does exist, right? So I just think, that part of us just operates at a higher vibration. I don't have all the answers about where they are and stuff but I did visit heaven. I did visit heaven a couple times, and it was real. It's like, you don't worry about anybody who's there. I actually felt it. It feels like being in the best spa in the world. I could hear like a brook babbling, but I couldn't see any water. It was like every wonderful, beautiful feeling you could feel, like unconditional love and peace and harmony, and everybody's just content. And I don't know, I can't even get enough wonderful words. And I saw a lot of cool things. One cool thing I saw colors there that don't exist here. And I can't recall them, but I know I saw them. And I can, if I'm not doing it anymore, but if I try to even go there, it's like I can go right to that, like almost to the fence, but I can't see them. But I know I saw them. It's the weirdest thing. I saw my grandparents there, and they were lovely people, but they had been in a nursing home for the last 2 years of their life. And my granny had only been gone 6 months when I first started having these out-of-body experiences. And I saw them, and they were old, the way I remember them, but they weren't sick. And I also peeked into this room, and it was like I peeked into a classroom, and it was really quite interesting. You remember the TV tables? I don't know why they look like those TV tables? Yeah, they look like those, and they all had screens in them. And it was like a classroom, and all these souls, I was told, that had just crossed over, had just come back home to the other side, and they were watching their life review. And this is where my life flashed before my eyes came from, right? So, and they were watching everything that they were doing here. Okay, leap to the 90s when I'm home with my kids watching Oprah. She had Betty Eadie on. She wrote a book, Embraced by the Light, and she had a near-death experience during surgery, heart surgery, I think. She saw that same room. I was like almost dropped my kid. I was like, whoa! I was like half watching. I was like, I saw that room. And not that I doubted what happened, but it was just like extra validation.
You've mentioned the paranormal a few times, and I just want to expand upon that a little bit. So when people have the experience of feeling a presence in the room or perceive an object moving, or even a full-bodied apparition, are those the same people, the spirits you are connecting to? And are they always connected to us? Because, I mean, for us, for example, we give tours at historic sites, and sometimes we hear similar reports from people in specific locations, for example. So, when we have these kind of paranormal encounters, how do we encapsulate that? Is it about us? Is it about the space? Is it about the person who's passed?
I don't know if hauntings, I guess, or whatever. I think they got better things to do than hang out. So it's like a cemetery. People think it's full of spirits. I'm like, I don't think so. I think they've got better things to do than hang out at the cemetery. That said, if you go out to the cemetery and go visit somebody's grave, you're thinking about them. Thoughts carry energy. It's going to bring them in. So you don't go in vain. But if you go somewhere and think about a spirit who's passed or whatever, it's like sending a text message. It is. So often that'll bring them in. Thoughts carry energy, right? That's what we tell people to pray or manifest. You can, even somebody who alive just pops into your thoughts. Somebody random, you're like, gosh, I haven't thought about that person in a long time. Where'd that come from? They're thinking about you. You've been thinking about all morning and then calls you at lunch. Well, and you're like, that's crazy. I've been thinking about you all morning. Well, your friend's like, yeah, all morning your friend's been going, got to phone Jim at lunch, got to phone Jim at lunch. And every time he does that, you get a ping. And then he gets to and that's the same as people in the spirit world. If all of a sudden your loved one just pops into your thoughts, you think, oh, or whatever, that's them giving you a nudge. It's the easiest way, reoccurring thoughts, memories. There's lots of different ways that are unique, but that's the most common way. And you're like, oh, where did that come from? Well, it's them giving you a nudge. And almost always that's going to happen when you're alone with yourself, right? Because you're alone with your thoughts, you're alone with yourself. They may be watching other activities going on, but if you're busy with your kids or whatever, you're not going to pick up on it. So it's when you have alone time with your thoughts. That's why a lot of people get stuff when they're driving. I do. My dad's passed away, right? I'll think of my dad start my car and there's Johnny Cash, right? Right. I'm like, okay, dad's coming with me, right? And I can do two things at that moment. I can go, hey, dad, which I do, or I can talk myself out of what just happened, right? Because it's not tangible. That's what you want to do. So, if you are in a place, like going to do a haunting or something or check out our location. If they come through, if you're thinking about them. It's funny, I did one at the at Knox United Church here in Calgary, really one of the oldest churches in Calgary. And they brought me there. They did I don't know, they were doing a newspaper thing anyways. And I picked out a few people at church, but I was like, you know what? I get somebody completely different. There was a guy, I said, I hate to say this, but he jumped off the building and killed himself. Well, they didn't know what I was talking about. They did a little bit of went and talked to somebody at the church, and he did in 1930. There was a janitor that jumped off, and that's who I picked up on. So nobody was thinking about him, but he probably knew that somebody was there. And
that kind of ties to another question I have is, if you think this is a skill that all of us can kind of develop more. I think you're kind of hinting at that, the idea of just intention, or like, actively thinking about someone, kind of reaching out in your own way to think about your loved ones who have passed. And you mentioned kind of like often by yourself. So kind of in those quiet moments, those reflective moments, is there anything else that we can do to kind of enhance our own kind of psychic abilities?
Even just feeling them around, or feeling your own inner guidance, right? All the answers about you are inside of you. You got to think less. I mean, you really got to shut off the thinking. I mean, feel your way through life. Take your brain with you. But really, when it comes down to it, it's about what you feel. So I think quieting yourself. And if you kind of get, that makes me feel like mom or something, like, go with it. Talk to them. Say, you know what? If that's you, mom, give me a sign that you're with me. This is my experience. Don't tell them what sign, just ask them for a sign. Let that go. And it usually doesn't take long for something to happen. I was driving back in April. I just had a moment. I had lots of moments with my dad. He was a mechanic, and the roads were kind of crappy, and it was sleety out, and it was April, and I was like, eh. And all of a sudden, I wasn't even thinking about it, but all of a sudden, Walk the Line came on. That's my sign for my dad. And I'm like, okay. I said, Dad's with me. So I said, okay, Dad, get me home safe, right? I wasn't really worried. And then within 3 minutes, a van pulled in front of me, and it said 1927 on the back of it. What year was my dad born? What year? 1927. So it was just like, all right. And then it followed me all the way till I turned off to downtown Calgary and came home. So the thing is, if something just takes you there to your loved one, stay there. You can talk yourself in and out of anything. It's not tangible, but it's just like, I feel like they're with me, and just sort of maybe have a bit of a conversation with them. They love to reach out and make connection. When somebody first crosses over, you might find that you're getting more signs from them. They're trying to reassure us that they're still with us, that they're okay. They're trying to help you through your grief. And I hear a lot, it's like, I don't feel them around as much anymore. Well, you didn't go anywhere. If it was your dad or whatever, it didn't go anywhere. But they're just sort of pulling back and letting you kind of go on with your life. So that happened. They're always trying to take care of us.
You mentioned you can't control who comes through, but are you able to direct your energy? I guess, another topic we cover and are really interested in are historical mysteries, trying to figure out what happened in certain situations, disappearances, things of that nature. Do you get any insights on those?
Oh, yeah. I got a bunch of stories. One was, I had this girl, I haven't seen her in ages. She was in her late 30s. I love genealogy, and she did too. And she had big roots in the US. And she had been looking for, don't call me, second cousin once removed, who was in the Civil War. They couldn't find his grave anywhere. And she said, you got any ideas? And I said, actually, you're in the cemetery, but he's in the children's section. I said, he wasn't even 18. And she goes, oh my gosh, he was 17. I said, he's buried in the children's section. I said, right near the fence. And I can't remember. I saw two other things, and they found his body. They found his grave. Yeah, I guess the records weren't that great, and they found him. I've had numerous people. I told them where David Greffner was. He was a missing man out in BC. If people contact me, I don't charge for that kind of stuff, because I'm happy to help if I can, and I'm not always right. Yeah, I had my daughter's friend called me last summer because her boss's son went missing, and they figured he went into the Bow River, which I figured he did as well too. And the Bow was really, like, the water was rushing. I can't remember what time of year it was really rushing, and they said they figured he's long gone. I'm like, I don't think he is. I said, I see a sort of a little area. It almost looks like a pond. And I said, and it's not a beach, but I see like gravel all around it. And I said, I feel like he's there. I said, I go check at the fish hatchery. Right. Well, they found him at Carbon Park, which was right next to the fish hatchery. So I'm glad they found him. There was actually, with Ontario, there was two boys that were missing, that have been missing since I think the 80s or the 70s, two boys, and they were friends, and they've been missing and they didn't know what happened. So I used to do work with Missing Children's of Canada with Rhonda Morgan, and she brought me in one day and she said, I'm going to run a few things by you. And one were these two boys, Eric and John, that had been missing in Northern Ontario, I think around Thunder Bay or something. And I didn't know anything about them. And she says, they've been missing. They always thought that one of the boys' fathers murdered him. He went to his grave saying he never did, even though he was a badass. And I said, I don't think he did either. I said, you know what? I said, is there gravel pits there? And she said, actually, there is lots of gravel pits. I said, I think one boy fell in and the other one went to save him, to help him. And they both went. But I said, I know it's easy to say, but for some reason, I'm getting that if I'm right, there's something really special about one of the boys' bicycles. And she was like, what? And I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I'm not. I said, but there was something exceptionally special about one of the boys' bicycles. So I don't know what Rhonda did or who she phoned, but she phoned me like at 7:00 the next morning. She goes, guess what? And I'm like, what? She goes, one of the boys won a bike the day before he went missing. I'm like, that's it. He's in the gravel pit. That's it. So sometimes I don't get all of it so that somebody can validate it. I was like, that's it. She says, we didn't even know that he won his bicycle the day before. I said, yeah, they're in the gravel pit.
Well, since I have you here, can I ask you about a historical mystery to see if you have any initial impressions?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not always the best at this stuff because I don't think, I'll just say, I think I wasn't given this to, and you didn't ask me this, to win lotteries or to, to do all that kind of stuff or whatever, world events, but I'll give it a go. Sure.
So one of the great mysteries, and I appreciate your good nature in playing along. One of the great mysteries in Ontario is the disappearance of Ambrose Small. And Ambrose Small was a theater magnate who owned several theaters, Toronto, London, Kingston, in the 1910s, around there. And then he disappeared on the evening of December 1st, 1919, never to be seen again. No financial troubles, nothing that would indicate he didn't take his money, no sign of him. The day he went missing, he was last seen in Toronto.
See, this is the thing. The best thing for me to do, I always say, is to talk to a family member, right? Because they can validate stuff, right? That's because I can just kind of throw stuff up there. But when if I talk to a family member, then they can validate stuff like the bicycle and stuff like that to see if I'm right. You know what came up, though? I'm probably wrong, is Niagara Falls. Yeah. That was my first thought. That's why I was like, was he Toronto? My first thought was Niagara Falls.
And any sense of kind of what happened? Or was it an intentional disappearance? Was it an accident?
It was an intentional disappearance is what it feels like to me. I kind of feel like he just walked away. But it's funny. I was talking about the Bow River a few minutes ago, but my first thought was with the Niagara Falls. I mean, you said 1910, right?
1919, he disappears.
What I would love to do is, like, if he has family members still alive, I'd love to talk to them. And that's the best way because they can validate stuff that I don't know. Right? Like I had a girl come for a reading yesterday and I'm like, why am I seeing you buying a ton of bubble gum? And she was like, oh my gosh. She goes, I just went on a diet and I went and she said, I went to the dollar store and bought all the sugarless bubble gum. I'm like, yeah, your mom saw you do that. Right. So it's those little things like that I would have no way of knowing. Right. So, I mean, I would love to talk to any sort of family member. I'm always open to seeing what I can get. It's interesting for me as well, too. But my first thought when you said that was heading towards Niagara Falls. So I would like to know is if he had family or, other intentions of heading in that direction. That would be my question.
I wonder if you could share the story with us of when you connected with Winston Churchill.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I have friends, Rod and John, and they have this really cool house, this really cool old house in Calgary. And they were like, you got to come to the house and give us a reading. I'm like, okay, fine. I was like, okay. So I went to their house and there's the most amazing house. You think Liberace lived there. There's literally a grand piano in their foyer, if you want to call it. They have a foyer. But anyways, lovely, lovely guys. And so I was giving them a reading and stuff. And the whole, like almost as soon as I got there, I'm like, Winston Churchill. So near the end of the reading, I was like, look, I'm like, you're going to think this is crazy. But I said, I keep getting Winston Churchill. And Rod stepped back and he was like, you know what? And he said, I'm a big fan. He says, I have 7 original letters written by him. And I was reading them today. I'm like, no. I was like, love it. Yeah. Like I've channeled a few people. Lucy Bond Montgomery, her great niece, came for a reading. And it was funny because her name was Anne. I was like, you're named after somebody, but I was like, but it's not her name. And she goes, that's exactly right. So she wasn't named Lucy. She was named Anne. So she was named after the character.
Anne of Green Gables, of course. Yeah.
The first famous person I ever came through was Clyde Barrow, Bonnie and Clyde. I read for his, I think it was third cousin or something like that. I was like, I got a real badass here. He was a criminal. She goes like, keep going. I said, but man, he looks nice. Like he was a sharp dresser. And yeah, I can't remember the whole, the whole conversation. But yeah, it turned out to be him.
Maybe a delicate question, but I'm curious because those stories are so impressive, and you start thinking about, you're like, how is this possible? But I'll ask a very straightforward question: how often do you think you're right?
I am, or else I probably wouldn't be in business for 25 years and had a TV show and do lots of radio stuff and whatever. And almost all my clients come back. So yeah, I tell them right away, I don't get everything right. Like I'm not perfect or whatever. I do the best I can, but my track record's pretty good, pretty good. Like most people, like I say, do come back.
One question I'm very curious to ask you is how your abilities impact your kind of day-to-day life. Are you able to kind of turn it off when you need to relax and chill for a few minutes?
I don't know if it's Teresa Caputo or whatever that kind of set this precedent, but I'm not walking through malls picking up stuff all the time. My head would explode. But I have had moments. I've had little heartwarming moments. How you go to the same grocery store all the time, and you kind of see the same people. So it was like the 23rd of December, 2 years ago, right before Christmas. I was at Safeway, and the girl, Karen, who checks me out often, I was just standing there talking to her, was quiet. Or we went quiet, and I was like, who's Carolyn? And she went, that's my mom. She passed away 2 weeks ago. I said, Merry Christmas, honey. Yeah, and it was just a moment. So and it's funny, I go to Community Foods, which is a natural food store here every once in a while. And I can't remember her name, some psychic, I can't remember her name for anything, but she lost her brother in a motorcycle accident. If she sees me, she'll open her coat and she'll corner me in the store and she goes, you're not leaving until you give me a message from my dumb brother. And I'm like, okay, all right, come on, dumb brother. And usually he'll come through with some little things. So, I do have one, but I'm not picking. I was at Superstore once and I was just waiting in line. And it was funny, about 3 rows down, there was a lady standing there reading a magazine. And I saw an old gal come out from behind her and she looked at me and I looked at her and then she just kind of dissipated. But I'm not picking up stuff. I'm not picking up stuff all the time. My head would explode. That would interfere with my life.
Yeah, I could only imagine. It does kind of raise another question I had, which is about kind of ethical boundaries. On this show, we've covered, particularly during the Victorian period, how there were many mediums that were complete fraudsters, exploiting people, often when they were very vulnerable or, easily suggested or suggestible about certain things. What kind of boundaries do you set for yourself as you're interacting with people?
I just trust that whatever's coming through, they need to hear, right? So I just try to trust the source, I guess, or whatever. So if it's coming through, I'm not the bearer of bad news. I don't know, it's kind of a balance. But but that said, I tell them everything that I get, because I think that's if it's coming through, they need to hear it. Like I said, I'm not the bearer of bad news. Almost everybody who leaves my place feels better. They might have had a good cry or whatever, but that's not a bad thing, especially when men come. I'm like, look, buddy, it's just you and me. Let it go, right? I said, just cry. I said, I'm not filming you. I was like, you'll feel much better. I kind of get that with men. But honestly, I don't really set any boundaries. If I had to choose one, I don't do fidelity things, especially if men come. And I don't get that often, but I don't want going home and hurting anybody. It's like, you know what, I do. So I guess, yeah, I do have a few, but that doesn't come up very often.
It must be incredibly rewarding to do this work with people.
You know what? Anything where you can help others. It is. I do. I see a lot of their grief. I can't take it away, but I do see a lot of healing. I get lots of feedback. I tell them little things, to let them know that their loved ones around. So it is. It makes for a good life. What goes around comes around. So everything, people talk about old souls. We didn't really ask about this, but, I don't think anybody's on their first or last life, but I think some people have had more lives, right? Hence the old soul. And you know what? I think the easiest way to pick out somebody who's an old soul in the everyday world, old souls are naturally drawn to the service of others. Do you feel that? They're the teachers, the nurses, the social workers, the people who work with animals. You know what? Because everything you make other people feel comes back to you. And the easiest way to make a good life is to get into the business of helping others. A lot of people say karma's a bitch. I'm like, yeah, only if you are. right? You must have done something wrong. But it's a beautiful thing. Teachers and nurses may feel overworked and underpaid, but they don't feel empty. Right? Yeah. So that's everybody thinks they're 2-year-olds and old soul. I'm not saying they're not, and nobody's any less. We need all kinds of people in the world, but that is how you pick them out. And it makes sense. I mean, doesn't that just resonate with you? Yeah. It's just like what goes around comes around. Even karma is the golden rule. If you're a Bible person, do unto others as you would have it done unto you. If you feel like something's missing in your job, it's probably meaning. You don't have to quit your accounting job, but, go help somebody or go do some volunteer work or something, because honestly, that is the easiest way to make a good life for yourself, is to be a good person and help other people. If you do that, you'll have a blessed life. But you have to know you can't help everybody, right? And you trust your feelings, right? No, don't ever stop being a good person. But when you help the right person, you feel good. You may feel tired or worn out, but you feel good. You feel good. Like Mr. Rogers is saying, a crisis, look for the helpers, right? They're the older souls. But when you help the wrong people, you feel used and taken advantage of, right? And that's where you stop with that person. Don't stop being you. Just take it somewhere else. You'll exhaust yourself, trying to help the wrong person and stuff like that, being used and taken advantage of. It's like, don't stop being you. It's like, a lot of people say, I'm not going to do that again. No, just stop there. Just take your beautiful self and go help somebody else who appreciates it. You got to feel your way through life. That's the easiest way. You're talking about thoughts and intention. Karma, it's not what it's the intention behind what you do that creates your karmic experience. If you help somebody and it doesn't work out, but your intentions were good or your heart was in the right place, you're going to get a good karmic experience, because it's the intention behind what you do. And feel your way through life. Never mind what you think. But most of the time, though, what we think and feel is the same thing. Looks good, feels good, looks bad, feels bad. But if you're ever thinking one thing, but start getting a different feeling, the universe has your back. The universe is going, whoa. I don't care what you're seeing, but if you start getting a different feeling, the universe has your back. And sometimes you figure out why you have the doubt, but doubt means stop. Right. And it's just like, even if you're buying a used car, maybe it all checks out, but just something's bugging your butt. It just not walk away. Sometimes you find out what the reason was. Sometimes you don't. The important thing is to listen. And we've all had moments where we knew we should or shouldn't have done something. Right. And all you do with those moments is learn from it and listen the next time. We're all here to learn. Nobody comes here to have a challenge for your life either. People need to get that. And some people have way more challenges than others. But if you didn't have challenges, you would never learn anything. And if that's the point of being here.
My final question is definitely a personal one. And that's, I would say, my most profound spiritual moment, I feel, where I came into contact with the other side, or lacking a language to precisely nail it down, was my grandfather on my mother's side. During a very difficult time in my life, I saw him and he spoke to me. Now, he wasn't there in the room, but I knew he was there and I could hear his voice more clearly. So I just have to ask about him, because I feel that in some ways I'm connected to him in a way I don't quite even fully grasp.
Probably because he came to you. So what he came, you said it was a particularly hard time in your life, right? They're always drawn to who needs them the most. That's it, so you needed him the most. He knew that and he came to you. It's like in the physical world. I don't know if you have kids, right? But if you had, okay, but just say I have 2 kids, right? I love them both the same most of the time. No, I love them both the same. But if one was sick or needed a ride, the other one's got to wait. I'm always drawn to who needs me the most, right? It's funny. You would think my loved ones visit me in my sleep. They don't. Both my grandfathers have twice, or have once each. Sorry, and once was a particularly low time in my life, and the other time is when I had COVID. And my grandfather was British and always struggled with pneumonia. And he was like, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine." Yeah, and that's what he said. And I'm like, if my gramps come all the way. And so the only times they both showed up was at a difficult time in my life. I know lots of people think I get visits in my sleep all the time. I'm like, I don't know why, but maybe because I do it all day. They just leave me alone. But yeah, that's what happened. He was, and you probably feel that warmth and that connection because he loves you. He loves you, and he was letting you know you're not alone, that he's there for you. Messages are usually pretty simple, but they're powerful. They're powerful. So yeah, but that's what it was. They're drawn to who needs them the most. And that's the same idea when somebody first crosses over, where you might feel your loved one around more and more and more and more. It's like, oh my gosh, they're all this, because they're like, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And they're really trying to reassure you that they're not as gone and trying to comfort you. And usually when we cross over, our moms come for us, obviously, if they're gone before us. I think because they bring us into this world, that they help us out, and plus if your mom comes and puts her hand out, you know that you can go with her. She's only going to take you to a good place. So that's usually, it always feels like somebody comes for you, and it's usually your mom. Yeah. And then you reconnect with everybody. The obvious ones, and maybe the not so obvious ones. Maybe you had a great neighbor. I know I did this reading for this lady. She was in her late 80s. She was like a spitfire. She was in her late 80s. And from the minute she walked in my house, I kept saying, I got a little boy named Eddie here who died as a child. And she was like, I don't know any Eddies. I was like, the weird thing is that's my brother's name, although he's alive. And I was like, really? A little blonde boy riding his bike. And she's like, don't know any Eddies. I'm like, so her reading was great. And I was like, Eddie, Eddie, Eddie. And right as she was about to leave, I'm like, okay, he drowned. And she went, oh my gosh. She goes, when I was 12 years old, I used to babysit a little boy next door. His name was Eddie, and he drowned at the cottage. I'm like, that's it. Yeah. And it wasn't until he said that, then I could see it, all the lights went on. Yeah. I don't know why he didn't tell me that at the beginning. I don't know. But that's, and it was like last, and she goes, he was a little blonde boy. And he said he lived right next door, and I used to babysit him. Yeah. And she said he drowned at the cottage when he was a little fella. No. Yeah. I'm like, oh, she goes, why is he here? I'm like, why not? Anybody can show up. I had a terrific teacher for 1 year. My parents were divorced, and I had a teacher for half the year in grade 3. And all I knew, I was like 8. Okay. So keep that in mind. All I knew, her name was Mrs. Burgess. I didn't know her. I didn't know anything else about her, but she was the most beautiful teacher. And my parents separated that year, and she knew about it. She was very, very kind to me. But she was expecting a baby, and she left at Christmas time, and she moved to California. And I used to write to her. Now, I was 8 years old. Now, I knew nothing about her. My whole life, I thought, I would love to connect with her and tell her what a great teacher. My dad was a teacher. What a great teacher she was, and what it meant to me. And all I knew is she was from California, Mrs. Burgess. So one night, I put in California Burgess last name. 750 came up. I picked a Bill Burgess. Phone left a message. I said, this is out there. I said, if there's a Mrs. Burgess who was a teacher at Birchcliff School, I said, I just wanted to reach out to her. I said, I know I'm probably wrong. Well, they were on vacation. 3 weeks later, she phoned me, and I got it right. And it was her. And you know what? Bless her heart, she died almost exactly a year later of a brain aneurysm. And she never taught school again. And her son reached out to me, and she goes, he said he couldn't believe the timing. And I was like, I can't believe that is 750. I didn't even know her first name. All I knew is she moved to California. Yeah.
Well, Kim, I really appreciate you making not only time to speak to us, but really bringing such a positive message on so many fronts, and really gets to, sometimes the paranormal, or us who kind of explore these topics, get a bad rap, but we're talking about like what it means to be alive and what life is all about.
Yeah, just, feel your way through life. How you can walk into a room and nobody said or moved, and you're like, ooh. I just like, wow, what's going on? Did I miss something? What happened? Right? Something's happened. Or the opposite, you walk into a room, we're like, oh, this feels good. Or this job interview, I'm like, all right, nothing's happened yet, but I'm getting a good fit. Vibes are everything. Feeling is everything. You do. And a lot of people, the idea is to listen to it. It's never wrong. The universe will never steer you in a bad direction.
Kim, after our conversation, I feel like a lot of our listeners will be not only interested in following your work, but maybe even booking some time with you as well. Where is the best place for them to go do that?
Well, Clairvoyant Kim, I have a Facebook page, so you can go there. And I also have a website, clairvoyantkim.com. Clairvoyant is just a French word meaning clear seeing, right? The first day I walked into a radio station, they called me that because it sounded good with Kim. Psychic Kim, medium Kim, clairvoyant Kim. For the first 2 minutes I walked into my first radio station, they coined me Clairvoyant Kim. So clairvoyantkim.com is my website, and my Facebook is Clairvoyant Kim.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and certainly going to keep a lot of things you've said in mind as, I go about my daily life now, and, just see what happens.
Okay. All the best. Thanks very much, Jim.
I found that an extremely fascinating conversation with so many different parts of it I'm still thinking about, and I imagine you are as well. Thanks once again to Kim Dennis for joining us. If you are interested in getting a reading from Kim, I highly suggest you follow us on social media. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Haunted Walk, as in the next few days after release of this episode, we'll be doing a contest for a complimentary reading with Kim. So you can be the one in the hot seat asking questions and maybe getting some answers. For information on our ghost tours and paranormal investigations, please visit our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. And we would appreciate it if you could follow, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.